All right, we're going to start today with paganism. And I told somebody else that, and I said, I could see the disappointment on their face. Paganism? What is that? Druids dancing around Stonehenge? We need to learn about that? I know that's what people think when you say paganism, Druids dancing around Stonehenge. And that was paganism, absolutely. But what we're going to look at is paganism applied today. And there's a lot of it. I think you're going to be surprised. There's a ton of it, and it's ridiculous. It's out of hand. Webster's dictionary defines paganism as one who has little or no religion and who delights in sensual pleasures and material goods. An irreligious or hedonistic person. Boy, that covers a lot of people. Now, neo-pagan are witches, druids, goddess worshippers, and other pagans. There's a ton of that going around. You mention witches and people think, that's silliness. Witches is goofy. It's, are you serious with the hats, with the points and the big nose and all this stuff? Well, Ecclesiastes 1:9, there is no new thing under the sun. There is paganism, there is witches, there is this neo-paganism everywhere. 2 or 3 weeks ago, I had to go preach in Lakewood Park. They built in Lakewood Park like $5 million steps. They call them solstice steps. They are literally sun-worshiping steps. There was on the solstice, which was in June, thousands of people when the sun was coming down at the solstice steps in Lakewood. Thousands of people doing drum circles, chanting, praying. And these are the people that are out on the streets. I mean, they're sitting next to us in restaurants. They have the belief that there is special power on certain days, that you can get power from the sun. The people's beliefs aren't just because they want to have a party on the solstice or on certain days of the year. They have these beliefs all the time, and they just come out and make themselves visible on those certain days. They're doing this stuff all the time. My wife used to work in a witch store that still exists. A witch store where they had covens and stuff like that, practicing and casting spells and doing all this stuff exists. And it's actually really prevalent. You don't know it, and the people sitting next to you at the restaurant don't look like, big nose, warts, and a hat, and carrying around a broomstick. They don't look like that. They look like normal people. There are practicing witches all over the place. There are pagan, neo-pagan people everywhere, all over the place. And you'll be surprised. Let's get into this. Just to illustrate again how they're all over the place. I used to own a music club. And there were bands that would approach me to play at the music club quite often that would suggest that I could only book them on certain days of the year because those days had great power that they would get from the day, from the sun rising or the sun setting or certain areas in the sky that the sun or the moon would be. They got power, and they literally affected their lives. They would act on these beliefs based on, they couldn't even do stuff unless it was on certain days of the year. So these people are around us. They're influencing the way other people think. Listen to this. There are approximately 8 million practitioners of Wiccan in just the USA. And that doesn't count the darker forms of witchcraft. Wiccans think that they're okay, they don't do bad things. That doesn't include the darker forms of witchcraft, which there are many. 8 million practitioners just in the USA, and they're not all admitting to it. So if you can admit, if there's 8 million that you can identify, there's a bunch more that you're not aware of. Like if you ask somebody if you cheat on, you're taking a survey, do you cheat on your wife? You get an answer, and then there's zillions more. The number of Americans that are Wiccans is doubling every 30 months. According to the American Religious Identification Survey, Wicca experienced an average annual growth of 143% in the United States alone between 1990 and 2001. 143% growth. That's incredible. The two most recent American Religious Identification Surveys declare Wicca, which is a form of paganism, as the fastest growing spiritual identification in America. You'll ask people, what about Muslim? What is the fastest growing religion in America? A lot of people will think it's Muslims. It's Wiccans. More than Muslims. And Muslims are everywhere. More than Muslims. So, and this is something nobody thinks about. Nobody thinks about it. You think, again, like I said, Druids dancing around Stonehenge. No, it's all over the place. According to the author of the book Generation Hex, Wicca is the fastest growing religion in America, said to be the third largest religion in America by 2012. So it's an old quote. I'm sure it achieved that by now. And this author of the book Generation X, furthermore, every major city in the United States has networks of Wiccans. Networks of Wiccans. So what do Wiccans believe? Well, the first important thing to know is they don't believe in sin. They don't believe in sin at all. Here's a quote. This is a person called Alex Marr, author of Witches in America. There's something interesting about this person. This person was a Catholic and then was doing a book on Wiccans and became a Wiccan, because there's a lot of similarities. We'll get into that in the surprise week that Catholics comes up. Listen to this quote from Alex Marr, author of Witches in America. Wiccans are polytheistic, worship nature, hold that female and male forces have equal weight in the universe. I would love to dive into each one of these sentences. Male and female forces have equal weight in the universe. Pagans believe that the divine can be found all around us and that we can communicate regularly with the dead and the gods, small g, gods without a go-between. They don't believe in heaven or hell. Many subscribe to some version of reincarnation or the next world they call Summerland, nor is there a concept of shame. Again, that's kind of, they don't believe in sin. Nor is there a concept of shame, but an idea of karma. They believe in do what you want as long as you don't hurt anybody. Now, what's interesting is, do you know what the first tenet of Satanism is? Do what you want shall be the whole of the law. It's the same thing as Wiccans believe. Do what you want shall be the whole of the law. That's amazing stuff, and that's all over the place. If you talk to a Wiccan, they don't believe that they're Satanists. Really, they are. And they won't admit it, but they are. They agree with the very first tenet. If Satanism had commandments, do what thou wilt shall be the whole of the law, is the number one commandment in Satanism. And that's what Wiccans believe. Now, they say, do what you will as long as you don't harm others. The problem is, they're the ones that decide who the others are getting harmed and who isn't. Did you know right now, right this very second as we speak, there is a big group of declared Wiccans that are cursing Donald Trump? Did you know that? Does anyone know that in here? There is a group that is putting, a large group, matter of fact, it was reported in Time Magazine, the LA Times, and the BBC News reported on this equally, and it's going on right now. When there are, I forget the specifics of it, but when the moon does something, when there's like a setting crescent moon or something like that, they gather together and they want to bind Donald Trump. They are casting literal spells on Donald Trump. And yet they believe that they're not doing harm because he deserves harm. And they're the arbitrators of who deserves harm and who doesn't. This is going on around us. These are people, if you would look on websites, there's websites all over the place from covens and Wiccan people and Wiccan groups. The people that are self-proclaimed witches, and there's also warlocks, and it sounds so hokey to say it, but there are witches and warlocks literally practicing Wiccans that you wouldn't know. You mean they look just like the guy sitting next to you or the lady sitting next to you at Steak and Shake. You would never know, but it's all around us. The third most popular religion in the United States. And that doesn't count the rest of the world. They're crazy already and going nuts in England. You can imagine. So it's everywhere. And when I said we're going to look at paganism in play in our world today, do you know one of the biggest pagan festival? Now, I start this with Psalm 119, 165. Great peace have they which love thy law, and nothing shall offend them. I'm going to tell you stuff, and don't get offended. Great peace have they which love thy law, and nothing shall offend you. All right. It is Halloween. Halloween is an absolute nightmare. Halloween is a pagan festival that lots of people, even in this church, not only subscribe to, but participate in. It is a disaster. Wiccans have been celebrating Halloween since long before we even knew about it, since long before there even was a United States, actually. We were talking about the Druids dancing around Stonehenge. It goes back, Halloween goes back to the Druids. It is actually called, it looks like Samhain, but it's pronounced Samhain. The actual word for Halloween is Samhain. And this is pure evil. It is demonic and evil Halloween. This year, Americans will spend about $6 billion on Halloween crap and on Halloween parties and Halloween stuff. Halloween... Here's what Wiccans believe about Halloween. Samhain. It's when spirits, Halloween is the thinnest day, the boundary between the living and the dead is thinnest on Halloween. They think spirits travel back and forth, and they think that on Halloween, the boundary between the spirit world and our world is the thinnest. And spirits pass back and forth. Now listen to this stuff. This is what people I'm not pointing fingers because I didn't know until I did the research a few years ago. But this is what people are practicing right now and getting involved in, and it's a disaster. It is literally pure evil. This is some stuff about Halloween. To appease the spirits so they don't do harm, they would offer food and places to eat to these spirits that they thought were passing back and forth from the dead to the living. Bonfires would be set to ward off evil spirits. Druids would sacrifice animals and place their heads on stakes to display them to Satan. We still do that now, but we just use plastic skulls. It's the same exact thing. These things have been passed down. We're participating in them. People would impersonate or dress up like these evil spirits as a way of protecting themselves from them. Kids run around in costumes. We go to Halloween parties. We're dressed up as these things. Exactly like that as it is now today. This paganism is in our world right now, and we're a part of it. People would decorate their houses and try to ward off these evil spirits. There was a thought that if you were kind of like accepting of the evil spirits, they wouldn't come to you and do the harm that they were going to do. So you would appease them, put your animal skulls on posts in your front yard, dress your houses up. A pumpkin was a sacrifice to Satan so that his demons would pass by your house and not visit it with their evil. We do that now still today. Everyone thinks that's no big deal. I used to think it too. It's no big deal. A pumpkin is literally like a counterfeit Passover. Isn't that something? It's like a counterfeit Passover. And we're doing it. You put a pumpkin on your step, it's like putting the blood on the post. Except not God passing over, not the Spirit of God passing over, but the devil passing over. It's crazy stuff. Satan is the great deceiver. He's created his own Passover. Wow. Things like black cats, simple things, you don't think twice. Black cats, spiders, ravens, bats. These are Halloween symbols because of their pagan history and because of the beliefs of Wiccans and their rituals. These are familiars of witches from the Middle Ages. What are familiars? Familiars are animal-shaped spirits or minor demons believed to serve a witch or a magician as a domestic servant, spy, or companion, in addition to helping bewitch enemies or divine information. That is from witchcraftandwitches.com, and there's a zillion of these witchcraft websites all over the place, because there's a zillion of these witches all over the place. So these little black cats and spiders and ravens that everybody's putting up, those are looked at by witches and warlocks and these people as their little associates that are helping them do their evil stuff. They're literally demonic stuff. It's crazy, and we're participating in it. Leviticus 26 says, "And the soul that turneth after such as have familiar spirits," nothing new under the sun, "and the soul that turneth after such as have familiar spirits and after wizards, to go a-whoring after them, I will even set my face against that soul, and will cut him off from among his people." You are defiled by spirits and witchcraft. You are defiled by them. And you go out into the store, you're one of the people that are spending $6 billion on this stuff. You're defiled. You're letting spirits literally in. You're opening the doors. I tell people about that with booze too. You know, people, if you're a boozer or a drug doer, you open the doors. You let demonic influences come in to your life through booze, and here you're doing it again. You are defiled by. Let's look at Leviticus 19:31. Regard not them that have familiar spirits, neither seek after wizards to be defiled by them. I am the Lord your God. He declares, you will be defiled by familiar spirits and wizards. Defiled. I believe what God says, and here it is right here. Barna Research. Do you know George? I believe it's George Barna. George Barna, we went to see him speak, my wife and I. He came to Cleveland. He's like a Christian research guy, and he came to Cleveland and spoke, and we went and saw him. He said a full 70% of professing Christians don't believe in Satan. Isn't that something? I don't know now if that includes, I don't know what Christians are that he was referring to. But that's a high number no matter who it is. That's a ridiculous number. Don't believe in Satan. Now, does that include Catholics? Does that include Mormons? I don't know if it does or doesn't. But that's a high number either way. And when we're talking about paganism amongst us, great peace have they which love thy law, and nothing shall offend them. Right? Harry Potter, wizards and wizardry and spells and sorcery, it's everywhere. Twilight, vampires. Merlin is a British TV program based on Merlin the magician, the wizard. The Wizards of Waverly Place, which is Disney Channel teenage special. Game of Thrones, there's magic and sorcery all over it. American Horror Story has Coven episodes. Coven are witch groups. Salem is a TV series, pretty self-explanatory. True Blood is Southern Vampire Mysteries. Bewitched, remember that? Witches. It was a whole bunch of witches. You don't take it seriously, but it's witches. You're not supposed to have a part of that. I mean, how hard is that? Television, I call television SDS, Satan's delivery service. If you're sitting in front of television and it's pumping that stuff into you, what do you expect? I mean, first of all, what do you expect anyway? Sitting in front of television, what do you expect? I don't know what you're going to get out of it, nothing. But then you're watching this kind of stuff, and Satan, if you had a kid and you grabbed one of these chairs and you sat the kid down and you said, Satan, tell him everything you want to tell him. Knock yourself out. You would think you would never do that. If you're one of the 30% that believe Satan even exists, you would never do that. But if you used an intermediary, you turned the chair a little bit and you pointed it towards the television, you don't think twice about it. Satan is in that television. He's using that television literally to influence your children, your friends and neighbors, you, me, whoever it is. Don't sit in front of the television. Bewitched, Sabrina the Teenage Witch, Suicide Squad has conjuring and demons and witchcraft. There's a TV show, I don't even know if it's still on, but it was 666 Park Avenue. Did you hear about that? 666, that's the name of the show. It's all demons and wizardry, and it's unbelievable that this stuff is on TV. And that's a smattering. I don't know how many there are, a dozen of them. That's just a smattering. It's everywhere. It's all over the place and literally everywhere. Do you like Disney? Great peace have they which love thy law, and nothing shall offend them. Do you like Disney? Do you sit your kids in front of Disney to babysit them? Aladdin has a big, you know what's funny? I've seen videos on TV or on YouTube where they say, Disney exposed, and they show these like subliminal messages that you'll see in Disney movies, and they're there. You know, they'll be SEX spelled in the clouds, or, you know, there'll be a little thing somewhere. You know, these little tiny subliminal messages, they're all over the place in these Disney movies. And nobody has ever said, well, you know, there's a 700-foot genie in Aladdin. Snow White is loaded full of witchcraft. Fantasia, Mickey Mouse is a sorcerer. You don't need subliminal messages. These things are pounding us on the head with this stuff, with paganism, with demonic stuff, with paganism. It's everywhere in our culture. Peter Pan as a pagan fairies all over the place. Beauty and the Beast and magic spells. Little Mermaid has magic spells all over the place. Frozen has sorcery all over the place. They had Disney, then they have a movie, Escape from Witch Mountain. Well, what do you think's happening here? You're getting indoctrinated. You're having communion with this stuff. God says you are defiled by familiar spirits and witchcraft. That stuff is supposed to be avoided, totally and completely avoided, not sat and stared at. Have you ever heard, now this will be interesting because I know probably not many people in here will know what this is. There's a lot of these music festivals all over the place. Like Woodstock. Remember Woodstock in 1969? There was, I think, 500,000 people in upstate New York. Yasgur's Farm, Woodstock. There's still these festivals going on all over the place. That was bad enough. The paganism that was going on there was on display in full force. It's a zillion times worse now. There's these music festivals that go on. Burning Man is an example. Has anyone ever heard of Burning Man in this room? A couple of people have. Burning Man goes on. Burning Man started in 1986 as a summer solstice party. There was about 20 people. They gathered together on a beach in San Francisco, and they were literally worshiping the sun, a summer solstice party, and they burned a little effigy thing, and there was about 20 people there. By 1997, there were 10,000 people participating in this thing. And the things that they were burning are, I'll read this to you. I'm going to read this to you. There's a thing called Wicker Man. Again, Druids dancing around Stonehenge. We started with that. They come into play a lot because people mimic that paganism and they still practice it to this day. There was a thing called Wicker Man. Roman writers of the time, such as Cicero, Lucan, Tactius, Pliny the Elder, described human sacrifice among the Celts. Caesar and the geographer Strabo mentioned the Wicker Man as one of many ways the Druids of Gaul performed sacrifices. Caesar reports that some of the Gauls built the effigies out of sticks and placed living men inside, then set them on fire to pay tributes to the gods, again, small g, gods, to their gods. Caesar writes that though the Druids generally used those found guilty of crimes, so it's okay, these guys did some crimes, so we'll burn them as sacrifices to our gods. That's what we'll do. Sometimes those people weren't around, so they used slaves and innocent people. They thought killing and burning and sacrificing people that were guilty of crimes pleased their gods more. And if they didn't have those people around, well, they just used regular old run-of-the-mill innocent bystanders. So that's what they did. Now, that sounds great, evidently, to a large portion of the United States and throughout the world, so let's mimic that. So they built this festival called Burning Man, where it started with just a few 20 people. By 1997, 10,000 people, and a 50-foot tall wicker man. They burned this man in sacrifice, but they don't claim there's human sacrifice in this wicker man, but still there's thousands of people gathered around in a festival paying tribute and chanting and drum circling, just like we're doing at Lakewood Park in front of my own eyes. Year after year, currently there are about 70,000 people that gather at the Burning Man major event. And it has become an 8-day festival, and it's just a pagan worship festival. It's a pagan rite of passage. These things are all over the place. This thing has become 70,000 people, 8 days long. There's 286 regional contacts in 123 regions in 35 countries from this Burning Man festival. It's everywhere. It is a global phenomenon like no other. And in 2015, Burning Man got $1,419,000 in grants. So it's not just a bunch of hippies or, drugged out people doing this stuff. It's being supported by companies. It's being supported. I don't know if those grants were, I hope they weren't government grants, but would you be surprised if it was? No, not in the least. $1,419,000 in grants. This is from their own website. Plus, 2015 alone, they got $1,329,000 in just regular donations. It's incredible what's going on. They have education programs. This is just a Burning Man festival. They have education programs for art, civic engagement, education. They have a philosophical center. They have a global network. They have gifting engagements and contributions. They spread their corruption to others financially. This is like a network of paganism, and it's sweeping the country, and it's sweeping really the world. They have 10 basic principles: radical inclusion, gifting, decommodification, respect for the environment, radical self-expression, respecting rights and liberties of people, communal effort, value of cooperation, civic responsibility, radical self-reliance. It's an indoctrination into pagan values, into the whole country and the whole world. And this is not even the only one. There are these music pagan festivals all over the place. Has anyone ever heard of Tomorrowland? Tomorrowland it's actually even bigger. It's in Belgium. They have it year after year after year. In 2016, so last year, they sold 180,000 tickets in 40 minutes. 180,000 tickets to this pagan nightmare in 40 minutes, and had 130,000 people on the waiting list in 40 minutes. There's some graphic stuff. I'm not going to share it with you. There's some graphic stuff that goes on at these things. I'm not going to share it with you. I had it all written out. Has anyone heard of Coachella? Coachella is probably the biggest of these things. It's in California, the Coachella Festival. These are pagan festivals. There's no hiding them. They put some bands up on there. All it is, if you don't even look at the bands, lots of people go, they don't even know the bands are there. They're pagan festivals. 99,000 people per day at the pagan festival Coachella will come over 6 days, nearly 600,000 people. They had, according to the LA Times, a $704 million impact on the surrounding area. You think people are going to listen to what they have to say? $704 million impact on the surrounding area in the California area where they're at. They have pull, they have power, they have influence, they are spreading like wildfire. Paganism is the third largest religion in America. Nobody even knows it's there. People think it's Druids dancing around Stonehenge. It's everywhere. $6 billion on Halloween is spent. It's everywhere. Have you heard of Rock in Rio? There were 105 million people in attendance in 1985, a long time ago. And it's growing and still there. It's getting bigger. You might have seen, they just marched down the streets of Rio, and every kind of seductive and ridiculous outfit, and sex and adultery and lust and fornication. Everywhere you turn, it's the paganizing of the world. It is literally the paganizing of the world is what's going on. There's so much that I could tell you about this stuff. This paganism business could go on for the 6 weeks that we have. Halloween again, I want to get to, because this is important, because there's so many people even in this church that are a part of Halloween. Do you know, kids bob for apples? Do you know what that is? Kids bobbing for apples? There used to be slaves taken, and they would tie them up and bind them for sacrifice to play, literally to humor themselves. They would, with these bound human sacrifices to be, they would say, if you can dip your head into this pot and grab, I don't know if it was an apple, grab whatever it is floating around in there with your teeth, we'll let you go free. And they would. But the problem is, in the pot or the cauldron was boiling either water or oil or whatever it was, but it was boiling. So they're bound, they want to get free, they dunk their head into the pot, The boiling oil or water goes down their throat, scalds out their esophagus, deafens them, burns their eyes, disfigures their face, scalds their flesh. If they pull it out, they would let go free, but their life is, it's ruined. They're disfigured, they're horrible, they're blind or deaf, or esophagus is chewed out. This is what bobbing for apples is, that you see now, happy little kids, they don't know any different, and the parents don't really know any different. So here we are. Now we do know. Now we know the difference. That's what bobbing for apples. There's all this kind of stuff, but the most important thing to know, Halloween is satanic, and it is, you're participating in the satanicness, the demonicness of Halloween. Witches, Wiccans laugh at Christians who celebrate Halloween. They literally laugh. And then I live in Lakewood. There's a church in Lakewood that we saw just recently. We don't even stay in our house. I don't want to even invite that stuff to our door. We leave and go elsewhere. And we have Halloween tracts, and we hand them out to people as they walk by, gospel tracts. We were driving by a church that was in Lakewood. They had the doors open, and the female pastors were dressed as witches, sitting on their front porch with a cauldron, stirring it around, handing out candy to people to come. Based on what we just heard, do you know how many things are wrong? Forget the female pastors. Do you know how many things are wrong with that to begin with? I mean, thing, every single thing is wrong with that, starting with the female pastors. And then they don't use the Bible to begin with. They use some abomination. So what are you going to get? There's no truth anywhere. It's a disaster from front to back. It's a disaster from start to finish. So what do you think we're going to get? John 8:44, ye are of your father the devil, and the lusts of your father ye will do. He was a murderer from the beginning, and abode not in the truth, because there is no truth in him. When he speaketh a lie, he speaketh of his own, for he is a liar and the father of it. What's going to happen? This is who we're dealing with. So what do you think we're going to get? We're going to get this deception. So what are we going to do? What are we going to do? We're going to boldly witness the gospel to everybody we possibly can. And if it's uncomfortable, it's going to be. These are the people that are calling you racist, bigoted, homophobic, every name that they can think of, because these are their values. Of course, this is what they think. They honestly do think that. They're not just trying to slur Christians. They honestly think this, because this is their value system that they operate on. There's no sin, there's no nothing, there's no truth, everything is relative. They believe what they believe, and it doesn't matter if there's a word of God that contradicts it, because they don't believe any of it, because where's that verse that I just read? Well, because they're of their father the devil. That's why. What do you think you're going to get? That's what you're going to get. So Ephesians 6:19, and for me, the utterance may be given unto me, that I may open my mouth boldly, to make known the mystery of the gospel. We're supposed to be bold, even when it's uncomfortable. And is it the right time? Probably not. It's probably never going to be the right time. Do you think you're talking to somebody that's literally happy with stirring a cauldron or casting spells? Do you think it's ever going to be a right time? There's never a right time. They're always going to have problems. They're always going to come at you and call you names. There's never a right time. But do you know what? We all know that the Word of God is our offensive weapon. And we're told, when we're supposed to be meek, we're supposed to be meek in submission and service to God. That doesn't mean being meek and a cowardly Christian cowering in the corner. That's not what that means. That means be powerful in your service to God, but be meek in your submission to Him. So we'll be meek in his submission to Him. His submission to God is doing what He says. We're supposed to do what God says. 1 Thessalonians 2:2. But even after that we had suffered before and were shamefully entreated. Everybody's beat up. The apostles were beat up. They were imprisoned. They were beat up. They were shamefully entreated. But even after that, we had suffered before and were shamefully entreated. As you know, in Philippi, we were bold in our God to speak unto you the gospel of God with much contention. Is it a cakewalk? No. Does it make really anybody? Does it make sinners happy to be told that they're sinners? No. It doesn't. And it's hard and it hurts and it's a struggle, but it's the truth. And if you care about people, you're wanting to help them. This is not The judgment that the Bible talks about is looking down on people, not looking down on anybody. You stink because you have these beliefs. You stink because you think this. No, you're not looking down on anybody. We're trying in a careful manner to help people, trying to spread the word of God because it's helpful, because it's a salvation of their soul. And it's going to be much contention. We're told, here it is. We were bold in our God to speak unto you the gospel of God, with much contention. This is after they were already shamefully entreated. They're already beat up. They're already stoned or jailed or imprisoned or whatever's happening. So the pagans and sinners in general are not going to take it well. It's okay. It's all right. They couldn't have identified themselves more clearly as lost people. So you should think of this as a great opportunity. A lot of these guys are tattooed up. I teach the New Horizons Sunday school class, Adult Bible Fellowship. One of the guys just last week, I don't know if you saw him, he went forward and got saved. He came in with lost soul tattooed on his knuckle. He also had LGBT, he had all kinds of stuff tattooed everywhere. But he had lost soul tattooed on his knuckles. That's like, it's a proclamation. Here I am. Come to me. Here I am. I'm making it clear. It couldn't be, sometimes you look at people and say, I don't know, I don't want to go up. This guy's advertising. He's advertising to you. So you go and you give him it. And he's going to be grumpy. Then in this class last week that I teach, New Horizons class, there were two guys. This guy, lost soul, and another guy. They were argumentative. Matter of fact, his friend got out and left the class because he didn't want to hear it. I don't want to hear about sin and this kind of stuff. And the Bible is all a bunch of bunk. He literally got up and left. They were contentious the whole time, including the lost soul guy. Well, there was no, all right, we'll just agree to disagree. No, we do not agree to disagree. We agree that this is the truth, and if you don't understand it, you need to understand it. You need to understand the truth and the Word of God. And the one guy left and stormed out in a huff. The other guy sat there, and he got saved. He came down. Mike Harness consulted with him when he went up during the invitation. I don't know if anybody saw that. It was just last week. You don't say we'll just agree to disagree, or oh boy, you look like a tough guy. You got tattoos. You look like a lizard person. You don't, that's an invitation. I talked to a guy at West 25th Street who had 666 tattooed above each eye. Actually, this is a great story. I was at the park. Rebecca and I do a lot of street, handed out tracts and counseling, whoever we can, whoever will take the time to talk. And there was one, I was reading the Bible at West 25th, and there was a picnic table full of really rough-looking guys, and I just got on the picnic table next to them and just started reading the Bible. It wasn't saying another word other than the Gospel of John, reading through it. And they got so mad and cursed me out so bad, one guy called the cops. And the cops came and gave that guy a ticket for open intoxication. Awesome. That is fabulous. So he had an open container, public intoxication. He got a ticket. I went over, and the guy with 666 tattooed above his eyes, nobody wanted to be around the cops, so everybody kind of meandered away. And I went and talked to the guy with 666, and I said, why are you a devil worshiper? Literally, why? And he said, I want to go to hell to be with my friends. I said, man, your friends don't want you there. There are no unbelievers in heaven or hell. Your friends do not want you there. If you can do anything at all in the entire world for your friends, it's don't go there, because they know the truth. They know exactly the truth. There are no unbelievers in heaven or hell, not one. And that guy, the rich man who was reaching out his tongue for a drop of water to cool his tongue 2,000 years ago, or 3,000 years ago, whenever it was written, is still there. And he's still in torment, and he's still reaching out his tongue, and he's still asking to be quenched. And he's still going to be 2,000 years from now and 2,000 years from then. It's never going to change. And we know that truth. And these people don't. I didn't. I wish I did. I wish somebody would have taken the time. But nobody did. Nobody bothered. Nobody ever took the time, and nobody bothered to tell me anything about it. When I found out, I was all for it. Great. Fantastic. I think there are lots of people. This guy with 666 tattooed above both eyeballs, he was ready to listen. He wasn't coming after me with daggers or anything like that. He was ready to listen. He was actually a nice guy. And we talked for 15 or 20 minutes about his salvation and different things. He was curious. He had all kinds of questions. It was great. The guy who called the cops on me wasn't that way, but that's what that's what happens. That's what happens. So Luke 8:1-3, and it came to pass afterward that he went throughout every city and village, preaching and showing the glad tidings of the kingdom of God. And the 12 were with him, and certain women which had been healed of evil spirits and infirmities. Mary called Magdalene, out of whom went 7 devils. And Joanna, the wife of Herod's steward, and Susanna, and many others, which ministered under them. 7 devils. People are infected with devils. The 30% of the people that understand that Satan is real understand this truth. People are infected with devils. When you get bondage in paganism, you can open yourself up to the demonic influences. You're not going to lose your salvation, but if you don't have it, you're going to make your lives miserable. And if you do have it, you're going to have, the devils will try to destroy your testimony. The devils will try and destroy your testimony. And what are you going to do? You got to stop it, nip it in the bud. You know it's there, so why would you partake in it? You know that this Disney stuff is ridiculous. It's ridiculous. You don't have to look for subliminal messages. There's a 700-foot blue genie. It's ridiculous. You don't have any part of it. Nathan said to King David, "You are the man." He was convicting him of his evil. You know, he's told the story about the lamb, the little baby lamb. You are the man. We are the man. We're in a part of this. $6 billion is spent on Halloween. I've spent some money on Halloween. I'm never going to again because now I know. So now we know, right? I'll leave you with this thought. We'll close with this. When you sin, when anybody sins, the next sin is easier. When you stay away from it and you grow in your righteousness, you grow in your righteousness. The next sin is not easier, and it doesn't come easier because it does come easier when you continue in it. When you're doing something sinful and you continue in that sin, the next sin comes easier. Paganism is a sin. We heard it from the Word of God. It's everywhere, and it's growing, and it's all around us. And not only should we not participate in it, but then the next step is you boldly proclaim the Word of God. It doesn't matter if it's uncomfortable, because it is. It's uncomfortable talking to your best friend about it. It's uncomfortable talking to a complete stranger about it. But if you have that love in your heart for your fellow man, which this is a wonderful church. I've never seen so many loving, caring, praying people. It's amazing. I know that everybody has the love in their heart for other people, so you get out. You get out and you do what you can do. Some people can do more, some people can do less. Everybody can do something. And we'll end on that. And you're doing something right now by being in church on a beautiful day. Thank you.